Al Jazeera has been banned. Yeah, you saw those headlines everywhere a couple months ago, and you must have seen those headlines everywhere in the past couple of days because they were banned again. If you didn't, maybe it's because this time they weren't banned by Israel, they were banned by the Palestinian Authority. Yes,
Palestinian
you know,
Authority. Yes.
terrorists
Uh,
terrorists think that Al Jazeera is a bit too pro-terrorist for their taste, so they have banned that channel. But that is another instance of something that hopefully we'll see a bit more and more of, which is the anti-Israel, overwhelmingly anti-Israel Arab world and wider Muslim world um, fighting amongst each other, and then maybe being a bit too busy to kill the Jews. And hopefully, in this sense, in this case, if such infighting continues, the West doesn't start arming one side because it's supposedly not as bad as the other. Yeah, let them fight, as they say. Usually, when people say that, I am not a fan, but in this case, let them fight. Welcome to the reality show. Oh, I'm so Christmassy that I forget which show it is. Yeah, this is a as Christmassy as episode as we can have. But yeah, we'll try to make it somewhat of a celebratory episode. I'm joined by Daniel, Jonathan, and Alex. Alex, is this a major moment, the fact that Al Jazeera is banned? Is this something that what's going on here? I mean, the Palestinian Authority has gone to war in the past with Hamas for a little bit. You know, they've killed each other a little bit. But yeah, is this something big that's starting?
No, it is not. You have to think about what the purpose of the Palestinian Authority, well, what the I would say goal of the Palestinian Authority is, besides destroying Israel. It's taken power. They're a dictatorship. So, what is there? There's several different types of armies. There are defensive armies like what Israel has, and then there's what they call palace guards. And that is basically a police force or a military that is there to keep the dictatorship in power. So there's several reasons, right, that of course the Palestinian Authority as an evil dictatorship could have banned Al Jazeera. The first one is because they're producing subversive content that is encouraging them to encouraging the Palestinian people to try to overthrow the Palestinian Authority. And the second would be that this is a dog and pony show, right? This is a big show for the Israelis because the Palestinian Authority have not exactly done a stellar job of their anti-terrorism efforts, especially in areas like Jenin, where they've just completely lost control. So last week and the week before, we saw a lot of reports that the Palestinian Authority was initiating a crackdown on terrorism in Jenin, and it was sort of this last ditch effort at kind of staying in power, right? Because the Israelis were like, okay, listen, guys, if you don't do the job, we're going to come and we're going to do it for you. Okay, we're going to come, we're going to do it for you. Somebody has to restore order here. Somebody has to stop the guy. And what happened, of course? Well, Hamas managed to take one of the Palestinian Authorities' Toyota trucks. They took it over. So then you saw that all these videos going all over TikTok. It was with Hamas terrorists, right, with their balaclavas and their Kalashnikovs and their RPGs riding around town in the Palestinian Authority Toyota. And there was a comment that came out that one of the Israeli generals said. He said, guys, like talking to the Palestinian Authority, he says, this is your last chance. Okay, deal with this problem or we will deal with you. So that's what I personally think. I think it's the second one rather than the first one. This is a show. They want to say, please, 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 please don't come and take over. We're relevant, because, we're the good guys.
Yeah, and of course Israel will buy that because they want to. Thank you, Roland, for the super chat. Roland says Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you as well. Jonathan, before I go to you, Paul says, Alex, you've forgiven Razi for not reading your super chat yesterday. I must have missed that if I didn't read it. It definitely wasn't an intentional. I don't recall this. I have to say, yeah, you remember that Seinfeld episode where Jerry and Kramer switch apartments? And because the chicken place across the street just opened, and then Jerry and Kramer couldn't sleep, and then Jerry couldn't sleep. That was me on yesterday's shows. So
This
anything
sounds like an excuse, guys. I mean, don't you think, Jonathan? This sounds like an excuse, right? This is the kind of
if
thing. I'm not your wife, okay?
Daniel, if you have that super chat somewhere, send it to me and I'll read it today. Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just put it in some context now. We're talking about banning Al Jazeera, for example, but what is the basic principles in the Middle East? Alex is in the Middle East right now. She's in Israel. Razi's lived in Israel. I've visited myself Israel a number of times. Ex-Israel, and I will quote myself, ex-Israel, what is the Middle East? It is, and this is a tweet from 12 years ago, no, 11 years ago. The Middle East is ex-Israel as a savage Islamist tribal cesspool. So I'm not surprised. And I mean, you folks are the expert. You live there and you're much more scholarly, but there's tremendous, fighting amongst these Islamist tribes. And, Rand talked about it. We'll have some quotes from Ms. Rand we'll talk about for quite some time. But even recently, Iran and Iraq went at it for 9 or 10 years, as I recall, in the 80s. And the uprising in Syria, it's not like it was freedom fighters running in like Paul Revere, bringing liberty to Iraq. That's just another form of Islamist rule. So that's why I support Israel? Why do I think Ms. Rand supported Israel? Is this one miracle? I say that in a completely secular sense of, a reason in the Middle East. And as I said 11 years ago, a savage Islamist cesspool. It was that 10 years ago. It was that 40 years ago. And unless they get some better ideas, they will always be that.
Alex, a late thank you for the super chat. Alex says, Pravda67, Israel is a, quote, terrorist regime which, quote, raised terror to the level of state politics. On Entebbe, quote, Israel committed an act of aggression against Uganda, assaulting Entebbe airport. And Christopher says in the chat, your title is racist. Look, anybody who takes it that way is picking and choosing how they see this. We're not talking about let's get random Arabs on the street in a Western country and have them fight and have a Merry Christmas. No, we're talking about the savages who want to take down Western civilization, who in the Middle East are, for the most part, Arabs, and in some cases fight against each other. And we'd like to see more of that. So,
and Razi, that's what they're united in. The one thing that they are united in is their hate of Israel. There's lots of intercultural skirmish in that world, but they all hate Israel. They're all against Israel. So, Miss Rand had a pretty interesting perspective on World War II, as I understand it. Initially was basically let Russia and Germany fight it out. And why not? Why should Israel risk itself when there's inter-Arab skirmishes, as long as they're made safe? Which is why I was glad to see Israel take out a lot of the Syrian military infrastructure amid all of this. Not as an act of aggression. They're not. They're making themselves safe, exactly as they should.
Yeah, by the way, allegedly, according to some report, Assad gave Israel the locations that they should bomb in exchange for them not killing him when he's in exile. But I don't know if that's true. It doesn't seem impossible. But anyway, Daniel.
Yeah, well, first of all, about the racist title. Well, Arab is a linguistic group, not a racial group, so it cannot be racist. But talking besides that? Well, first of all, about the Palestinian Authority banning Al Jazeera. That's really interesting because most Palestinians get all their news from Al Jazeera. So this is going to be interesting. Maybe we'll actually get de-radicalized Palestinians since they no longer will read this newspaper. I'm sort of holding my breath, but it's going to be interesting to see. And it sort of shows how disunited, how basically at each other's throats they are. I mean, you have to remember the only way they are united is again against Israel. That's the only time they can ever be united. As soon, before there was Israel, they were fighting amongst each other. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but after, Israel goes away, let's hope not, they will continue fighting amongst each other because they don't have, and sort of now going to what Jonathan said about this idea of like an Israeli miracle, and, it's sort of used poetically, but that's actually what Javier Milei's sort of success in Argentina was described: economic miracle, because capitalism working is like a miracle. We just have no idea how it's working. And in a similar way, Israel is no miracle. When you institute a nation that is based on protecting individual rights, protecting property rights, you'll have a successful nation. This is not a new thing. We know this for about few hundred years at this point, and it's the same way. That's the exact reason that separates Israel from other nations. Is these other nations have no basis in any sort of philosophy besides either some form of Islamism or some form of sort of secular, basically socialism. It's at the end of the day, it's all collectivism. And when people talk about a potential where Syria might go potentially, at the end of the day, as long as they don't have any basis in individual rights, it cannot really go anywhere because it will just be another Arab nation in a similar way. It's just gonna be based on some sort of tribalism, some sort of basically some sort of collectivism, and by nature they cannot coexist with each other.
Yeah, you talked about things that aren't miracles, but when you have enough oil for one day and then it lasts for 8 days, that is a miracle. Whenever, I have like, see the olive oil is like running out and then it lasts, I'm always amazed. But anyway, yeah, with Syria, Alex, we haven't actually, we were going to do an episode, and at some point we will do an episode about what Israel has done in Syria. But just as since we do want to keep this Christmassy episode positive, how big a deal is what Israel did in Syria, and how much will it impact what might happen there in the coming years?
I mean, there's a few ways to look at it, right? So there's the way to look at it in that it was a huge deal, by the way. I mean, I would say it's after a whole year of these amazing military achievements from Israel, it was sort of just like, it sort of just kind of went past us. We were like, oh, you destroyed the whole Syrian military. Come on. I mean, you killed Nasrallah. Who's next? I mean, it was quite nice actually how quickly we forgot about it. But I would say it's one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing to happen. Beyond maybe even more than killing Nasrallah. And I think it's really phenomenal that we obviously had this very well planned, because I think it took about 36 hours in total, and 7 hours of the most aggressive bombing campaign to destroy all of their Navy, Air Force, and the chemical weapons factories. So it's obvious that we had really been quite deeply embedded in probably the signals intelligence, probably, even human intelligence. So for me, it was just absolutely wonderful. And there's a few ways to look at it, right? There's the way to look at it that's a little bit conspiratorial, that would say, maybe this feels a little bit coordinated from Israel. That all of a sudden there's this lack of weapons, shall we say, because they've been confiscated from Hezbollah. Then all of a sudden there's a massive amount of weapons that are with the al-Nusra Front, and then all of a sudden there's the whole of the Syrian military infrastructure is destroyed. So that's the conspiratorial angle that we would look at it. But the other one might just say to everybody else, look at this work of art. Look at how beautiful this was. Look at how we just completely destroyed everything in a few minutes, okay? So it was almost kind of like we're silent and we're, lethal. And I think that was a very important message to be sending. So yeah, I mean, you really can talk for hours and hours and hours about all of the various kind of infighting. Even in Syria, there was around 100 groups, 100 armed factions who were fighting for control. Some of them were even just within the same family, even, okay? So a lot of it is blood feuds. So a blood feud would be, if my family 4 generations ago had a fight with Jonathan's family, then our kids have to go after each other like the mafia. Right. So there you go. So that's a blood feud.
That's what I'm saying. It's so backward. The whole thinking there is backward. It's barbaric in its kind of conception of what life on earth is about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even yesterday I was talking with someone who was he was Arab, and in the middle, we're friends. In the middle of the conversation, he said we were talking about our families. And he was saying, oh yeah, my grandmother's actually she's actually from Egypt. And she came here, after she got married at the age of 12. And he just kind of paused after that and he just said, oh my God, we started laughing. We were like, this is just absolutely disgusting. And even, my family, doing my family tree, all the people that came from Yemen. I was making a family tree for my son, and their marriages as well were like 13, 12, because they were under pressure to marry the girls off, because the Muslim Arabs were kidnapping Jewish girls, who weren't married, and just, saying, okay, she's my wife now. She's not coming home. So they would get the kids married. They would get their daughters married at like 13 years old. It was very, very, backwards and wrong. It's hard. It's actually hard to meet anybody who has family who were, come from that area that wasn't widespread, even polygamy as well. And all of it's about kind of, trying to make sure the girls don't get kidnapped, right? Trying to, protect them from this. Even, this is very interesting, but Coptic Christians, how they have those very interesting tattoos. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? So Coptic Christians have these very interesting, very, I would say, iconic tattoos. Even here in Jerusalem. And the reason for that is that they would tattoo their children, right, all over, okay, as a way to mark them, because they were getting kidnapped and sold as well. So they were kind of, they would make a decision, okay, either I tattoo my kids, right, at the age of 3, or maybe, she just goes missing. And that kind of, those things have really actually shaped the culture, I would say, for generations to come. Really generations to come, because these things become intertwined, and they can sometimes feel as if they are, I don't know what the word is, but almost I would say they're, some of these things, they almost feel like they're biological, and of course they're not, right? This is all learned behavior, okay? But these are but what I mean is that it's behavior that is drilled into you from, infancy, right? And about, tribal fighting and tribal honor and women's purity and and it's drill, and so it feels like it's, these are physical things, right? That and Of course they're not. We're all humans. We have two arms, two legs. We're all the same.
Yesterday on the reality show, Anders accused me, rightfully so, of ruining the Christmas spirit and so on. Alex, I think you broke the record of that. Jesus Christ. Yeah. And but yeah, we know that this is the case, and this is what's terrible. And by the way, when we talk about Arabs versus Arabs, there are Arabs who despise that culture, have left it, are fighting against it. By the way, one of the anti-Semitic trolls who shows up from time to time is showing up here saying, "You expect us to believe you have Arab friends, LOL." I am sure that you, the troll, has no Arab friends, probably no friends whatsoever, but certainly no Arab friends. You buy into the propaganda, the anti-Semitic propaganda, and you push it, forward as you do in our live chat. But no, there are, believe it or not, there are Arabs who despise Arab culture and despise people like you who in the
Mhm.
West who go and promote the anti-human agenda that is so such an essential part of Arab culture. Jonathan.
And just to say, I had an Arab landlord for 10 years, and my boss also, also Arab. So don't know what, it really shows your ignorance.
Sounds like you live in an apartheid state. But anyway, Jonathan.
Well, I mean, just an observation, something that Alex, just mentioned, of kind of how culture is so, I don't know if we can say, I'll put words in it, but like kind of philosophy is so deep. It reminds me of like the Berlin Wall fell, and I think there was this hope and expectation that, capitalism and individualism and the Western mentality was spread all throughout Russia. They didn't at all. And, the same in the Middle East. We gave in areas where they have the opportunity to vote, they vote for another form of Islamist, altruist, collectivist servitude. And of course, hatred of Israel is just a get-go. Daniel, mentioned the nature of the Middle East. Miss Rand has these comments that go back to the article "Roots of War," which if any of you guys would like to read it, I will. Statism, in fact, in principle, is nothing more than gang rule. A dictatorship is a gang devoted to looting the effort of the productive citizens of its own country. When a statist ruler exhausts his own country's economy, he attacks his neighbors. It is his only means of postponing internal collapse and prolonging his rule. A country that violates the rights of its own citizens will not respect the rights of its neighbors. So those who do not recognize individual rights will not recognize the rights of nations. A nation is only a number of individuals. Statism needs war, a free country does not. Statism survives by looting, a free country survives by production. And isn't that like Israel versus the Middle East? Israel has not just survived, it has thrived. I was looking up the numbers. Israel's stock market does like hundreds of times more volume than any other stock market. I think the Iraqi stock market does like $3 million worth of stock a day. The grocery store here in Chicago does more business than that. I mean, these are tiny little backward is tribal Islamist gang rules, as Miss Rand wrote about, and that's why they need war. Israel doesn't start wars. It has had to defend itself against, I don't know, you can't, we've all seen the spreadsheets going around about, they were all launched against Israel, but it has just thrived by production, by focusing on reason. And decades later, the Middle East hasn't changed one bit.
Daniel, which chapter in Jim Brown's book is the one where he recommends investing in the Iraqi stock market?
Well, he doesn't. I don't think he has specific investment advice, but what he does have is general principles on how to basically move around when it comes to money and money creation. Let me remind people that today's episode of the reality show is sponsored by Jim Brown's new book, A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences. Let me just read you a little bit about it. How is money created? Who creates it? Where does it go? A century ago, John Maynard Keynes famously warned us that inflation sets in motion all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction and does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose. Keynes believed that inflation was too complex for the average person to grasp, but this book aims to prove him wrong. A Black Hole in Economics unveils the hidden maneuvers of central banks and monetary authorities that systematically drain your wealth without your knowledge or consent. With this book, you'll become the one in a million who understands inflation and its profound effects on your life and wealth. Most importantly, you'll acquire the tools to protect and grow your wealth in a world of relentless inflation and financial repression. And let me also remind that all the proceeds from the sale of the book go towards the support of Ayn Rand Centre UK. And I think now is a perfect time to understand how your money works, especially because money is only, we are talking about Middle Eastern culture. We are talking about a culture that has a very negative view of money. It's only civilization, it's only the civilized country that can have a positive view of wealth, of production, of success. I started getting into investing, and one of the interesting aspects of investing is sort of the emerging markets. Like, what are these sort of like emerging economies? And what's interesting about them is that I was looking into how sort of they are divided up. And if you get like an emerging market ETF, basically like it's like a portfolio of a bunch of companies from emerging markets. 10% of that portfolio is one company in Taiwan, because Taiwan is one of the most free nations when it comes to emerging markets. The other ones are like China, Argentina, Brazil. And it shows that the most successful ones, the actual productive ones, are the most civilized ones, are the most productive ones, like Taiwan. So that's why something like Taiwan can be, or a company in Taiwan can be at the top. And I also had a bunch of other things I wanted to say. First of all, Jonathan?
Well, I'll just echo quickly, Daniel. I mean, I remember early when I started investing, people still considered Israel an emerging market. And, why has it thrived? All the technologies people use every day, so many of these shitheads in the chat who, disparage Israel, Israel's all over their lives. The innovations born in Israel from Israelis, have changed the world and continue to. And in such positive ways. And like, what other area in the Middle East can claim any sort of innovation that has helped people's lives? None that
I mean,
yeah, I just quickly want to say, Daniel, also, because you mentioned Taiwan, we have this tennis racket at home, not an actual tennis racket, but it kills flies, and it's from Taiwan. So, yeah, Taiwan produces great things. There was a fly around there.
I mean, Jonathan talked about the success of Israel, and when you look at the developed economies, when you look at the ones that are actually productive, their power is always reason. It's always things like healthcare companies, information technologies, or it's like a banking sector. Oftentimes, when you go into these Middle Eastern nations, it's everything doing with the most simple way of engaging with the world. It's usually just extracting resources, which even that was usually built by us, and then they just nationalized it. But sort of when it comes to something that's really interesting about when it comes to sort of Syria and how people talk about it, or how we talked about sort of bringing democracy in Iraq, bringing democracy for the Palestinians, just have them have election. It really is like I'm wondering what's the right term, but like a really wrong view of civilization, as if civilization is just something, that just happens. No, it's something that requires a lot of knowledge. It took humanity, depends when you start. Let's say if you start with something like agriculture as like the first, thing, it took us thousands of years to go from like that simple way of living to actually discovering the nature of government, the nature of how to peacefully coexist and how to productively coexist with each other, and sort of looking at it as just something that it just happens. It really is anti-intellectual. And I think Jonathan talked about a little bit about the sort of the idea of end of history after the Berlin Wall fell. And I think even Leonard Peikoff had something similar to say when Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged, like, okay, we're done here. Like, this is it. Now everyone knows. And I think people had the same views again when Berlin Wall fell, when during the Enlightenment, like, this is like the end of history. Now everybody knows. But it talks about how intellectualism is needed and constant vigilance is needed, and understanding of what it takes to have a proper civilization is necessary to continue having civilization. That's why it cannot just happen. So, we can talk about Syria more. I have a few things to say, but I think that's like the most important aspect.
Well, Ayelet says in the chat, good luck to all sides of the Arab dispute, and the longer the better. Look, I think I'm spending this Christmas in a city that was destroyed, and rightfully so, when their country decided to behave in a way very similar to the way the Palestinians are behaving now. And this is now a civilized country. It's not impossible for the Arab world. It's a long journey from where they are now. But culture is not the metaphysically given; it is the man-made, and it can be changed. And yeah, for it to change in the Arab world, the current culture does need to be destroyed. Um, is it?
Yeah,
Is there? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just going into history, that was the golden age of Islam, where even Islam
Mm.
religion itself was a bit more, let's say, well, compared to the
Well,
Christians at the time.
yeah,
Well, no.
compared
I
to
mean,
the others.
listen,
Yeah.
there are things which are absolutely, I mean, it's absolute barriers to prosperity. And I'm not talking, this is nothing, by the way, that is like, ingrained in anybody. These are ideas, okay? Let's talk about Islamic principles of money making, okay? So all interest is forbidden. Okay,
Yeah,
so you
but
may not,
again, I'll
yeah,
just jump in. That's
yeah.
the same for Christianity. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's like a fundamental, like people will ignore religion when they want something better. People
No,
ignored religion during the Enlightenment. Same thing can easily, I mean, does Judaism even allow money lending?
no, okay, so it does allow it. That's actually Jews were the money lenders. That's why that's why that's the kind of whole point. That's why they were expelled from the England, is because the Jews were, because of Christianity, the Jews were permitted to loan, and they loaned to the royal family, and then the royal families didn't want to pay them back, so they just persecuted them and kicked them out. And this happened a few times, right, during history. I'm meaning, really today, today you have banks. There's a bank in Israel that is an Arab bank, and there's no interest accrued, no interest given. You're only allowed to invest in anything so long as it, number one, adheres to Islamic principles. So you're not allowed to invest in a company that's high risk, right? So high risk investments. You're also not allowed to invest in a company that does accrue interest for any reason. So you're talking about cutting off like most of any kind of interesting investments, right, that might potentially that might potentially have, for the individual person like me that wants to buy some options in something, right? It's just completely, for them, it's completely and utterly out of the question. And I do think as well the nature the because the entire philosophy which runs through Islam is about brutal control, right? It's violent control. It's about violent control and keeping women and hoarding women, and women are basically just they're just like sheep or whatever. And it's about the men in the tribe being able to keep. Why do you think the honor killings happen? Right? Honor killings happen because your tribe is your strength. Your tribe is the one that's going to be able to dominate the source of water and make sure that your family basically exist. So when a woman has disgraced herself in some capacity, you have to kill her because she is bringing the tribe down. Her shame is your shame, right? So there's only a collective identity because of tribalism. Only.
Jonathan, I know you don't want to give investment advice, but considering what Alex just said about Islamic banking and how it works, do you see that as in any way something kind of that you would expect considering their culture, or that is kind of a symbol of how with that mindset, they're stuck in whatever century they're stuck in.
Yeah, I mean that perspective on money, and to echo Daniel's point about America, Western thought, individual rights is such a historic achievement, and for how many we think of 5 years a long time, 10 years a long time, 100 years that's a real long time. How many thousands of years it took, just to get to this, and forget the level of technology, but the level of understanding of how man is supposed to live, as a man, not as a tribe. And that's when I look at, I don't know how many years ago it was like in Saudi Arabia, like they finally let women drive, and everyone's like, oh wow, and I'm like, what the fuck, like what is wrong there? It's just, I have the same level of disgust for it as I have with North Korea. Of that is not a way man is supposed to live. So what are these economies based on? I'll, if I may, borrow again from Miss Rand, or quote from Miss Rand. This is again from the article "The Roots of War," which is in the book "Capitalism: The Unknown Ideal." Miss Rand observes that, quote, observe that the majority of wars of history were started by the more controlled economies of the time against the freer ones. For instance, World War I was started by a monarchist Germany and czarist Russia, who dragged in their freer allies. World War II was started by the alliance of Nazi Germany with Soviet Russia and their joint attack on Poland. So I thought of that, and I thought of just even recently, like, once again, the controlled economies, the Middle East, against the free economy, Israel. The controlled economy, Russia, against the comparatively freer economy, Ukraine. And, this is 50 years ago she wrote that. And it's, in my opinion, true, once again, playing out in real time. Israel doesn't get anything from war. All these young people, not so young people, have to leave their jobs, leave their families, leave their production to go destroy, bomb things. And that's a real shame because, it's I don't think it's a sacrifice, but it's a shame that that's what they have to spend their lives doing. Israel doesn't benefit from this, but they have to be made safe. And that's what a government is supposed to do. So again, Miss Rand's, you should read the article. It's in Capitalism, and it's truly a must read.
Yeah, but I'm confused, Jonathan. How can women drive if they have smaller brains? I don't understand how it's even possible. I hope the people in Saudi Arabia are safe now that they have these these things running around
Well,
like independent people.
it was recently announced because Saudi Arabia is hosting the World Cup in 2034. It was announced that alcohol will not be sold. So at least you won't have any drunk driving incidents there. So I'm sure everybody is
Oh,
perfectly safe in
right.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, there was
just
some
quickly.
fair.
I'm a big supporter of that because people might finally realize how
Drunk
boring
driving?
football is. No, banning like alcohol so people realize how boring football is.
All right. This is speaking of not being Christmassy,
Listen,
Daniel.
it's no gays, no women, no booze. You understand? No gays, no women, no booze. All right?
No
That's the
fun,
rules. Don't
basically.
come in then.
Well, Cristiano Ronaldo, is he still playing in Saudi Arabia? Actually, none of you are football fans, are you? If anybody knows, let me know in the chat. James Valiant says, what an awesome program today. Thanks. Merry Christmas, James. We look forward to you being back on the channel next week. And thank you, Mary, for the super chat. Daniel.
Well, I just had my Saudi Arabia joke, but just going into sort of going back to Syria, because there was one article about the potential future of Syria, talking about maybe they'll go closer, or sort of the influence will go closer to Turkey, to Erdogan, because he was a big supporter of both the rebels that were directly supported by Turkey, but also HTS received a lot of support from Turkey. So maybe they'll go there. Maybe they'll go a bit more the Iranian route, like Iran will still preserve some influence, or they'll be able to reestablish themselves as sort of like go back to the Arab roots, sort of become a bigger part of the Middle East. And this all, the way they were talking about it, it was really like just some kind of game. It like actually reminded me of one game I was playing, where it's all about, okay, will you get the influence over this nation, or will this country get influence over this nation? And it is real like a caricature, like you can imagine it like a caricature, like there are just a bunch of countries playing chess in the Middle East. I think there is one like that on Afghanistan specifically. But yeah, it's real like as I've said, like anti-intellectual way of like looking at it. Like you can never have like success just maybe if there is like right, if things move in the right way, maybe it will change differently. I mean, it reminds me of how oftentimes there are a lot of these like alternative history channels where they talk, well, what if Washington didn't cross Delaware River, and how much it would change the course of history. And it's really like wrong way to look at it, because history is moved by principles. History is moved by great people with ideas influenced by their culture, or great people influencing their culture. It's not like you can kill specific peoples in Syria, or let certain people in Syria live, and suddenly you have like this Singapore, or let's say Hong Kong in the Middle East. It is about the culture, and as long as the culture stays the same, which I don't think, just because Assad has left the country, now suddenly there's like a huge shift in what people think. It is really relies on like we need some sort of Islamic revolution if we ever hope the same thing that happened in Europe, where again, I'll point it. It's the same religion. It's the same way where the Ten Commandments basically say submit your mind. They're complete against, basically it's a complete mysticism in every way that Islam is. When you have better ideas, you'll rationalize the religion away. The same way we rationalize a bunch of stuff from Christianity away, the same thing will happen in Islam if something changes. Or maybe we can skip this step and completely give up in Islam, ideally.
That could happen, I think, Daniel. I think that the toppling of the Iranian regime may actually serve for, I kind of made this argument after the kind of the pager attack with Hezbollah. It's that, that was a real moment to kind of break through the thinking, and to say, for them to understand that Allah is not on your side, right? And in order to have, I think, that moment, and I think the pager attack really was that moment, because you saw the look of defeat, right? The look of absolute, I mean, just, pain, like, oh my God, like, oh, Allah is not with us. We can't fight because Allah's not with us. So it really actually was like that. So I even think that the toppling of the Iranian regime could serve as a type of, as a type of kind of breakthrough moment.
That is optimistic. I hope you're right. People often turn to God when bad things happen, so I'm not sure. But thank you, Enric, for the super chat. Enric says happy Festivus for the rest of us. Yeah, Festivus was 2 days ago, by the way. But the airing of grievances on this channel happens every day, and luckily, we've seen the feats of strength from Israel in the past 6 months or so. So. Yeah, there are some things to celebrate. There have been improvements on some fronts in recent months.
Well, the show today is entitled "Arabs versus Arabs: A Christmas Present We All Deserve," and I guess hopefully some of what we, if I can summarize a little bit, is as long as the Islamist, the mystical, the totalitarian, the non-individualistic, non-capitalist Middle East ex-Israel exists. I asked ChatGPT to list some of the examples of wars in the Middle East between Arab states or Arab proxies, etc., since the 80s. And you've got a bunch of them, over and over again. The Yemeni civil war, the Arab Spring conflicts. And, as long as Israel can be made safe and, protect itself, they'll stay tribal, just as they, Rand prophesized, she foresaw in Donahue. She in the Donahue Razi interview with that's certainly from the 70s. She identified, look at Israel, modern, forward thinking, bringing technology. And what is the rest of the Middle East? What are the Arabs she identified as, backward, Islamist, and they still are. And that's now 50 some years ago. So, unless those ideas change, I hope that they skirmish and squabble with themselves for the rest of eternity, and maybe find out what Israel does right. Maybe think, but gee, Israelis are doing well, they're prosperous, they're successful, they're healthy. What do they got over there that Allah isn't bestowing on us after all these years?
Yeah, this is usually the point in the show where I take the book off the desk and read what Rand said on Donahue. This is
It's Christmas.
not in my office. And by the way, I see that somebody in the chat today has decided to air his grievances with me for the second show in a row. But I'm gonna leave that to the chat rather than read it. Maybe in a super chat I'll read it, but I kind of doubt we're gonna see that. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, just sort of again wrapping up about what can happen in the Middle East, because it's really hard to imagine things will change when you have like these nations fighting against each other, and also basically like even inside of the countries that are fighting in the many of the civil wars. But also same thing was happening in Europe, and now we're all living together happily and hopefully ever after. Again, that required first a major philosophical shift first, and we also had two world wars before we met, and half of the thing being under communists. So, it will take some work, but this can also be much quicker. The fact that at this point, it's pretty much only Iran. Any real terrorism that's coming out, most of it is coming out of Iran. Now, this might be because many nations like Saudi Arabia focus more specifically on Iran, and maybe when that threat is gone, they'll rethink where to go from next, because again, these are authoritarian nations. They need a scapegoat. They need an outside scapegoat. But again, once Iran is gone, as long as we have moral confidence in ourselves, we get rid of Iran. And if something bigger or something different comes up, well, we can take care of that hard. We've seen what Israel, small little Israel with 10 million people can do. And it really shows the David versus Goliath almost story. But Israel is basically the Goliath by the strike. But it shows one little nation that is free can do against a bunch of dictatorships. Now imagine if the West itself had the moral confidence that Israel has to actually fight for itself. There would be no problem in the Middle East. They would not dare to attack us.
I think that's also because I'm just gonna say that dictatorships, by the way, like they're able to have 500-year plans, and that's why they're able to do, because they're not accountable to anybody, right? They're just run through violence. So like the Iranian regime has like a 100-year plan. So for them, they can do this kind of horrible plotting and plotting and plotting and plotting and plotting, and really embedding themselves in all the terror networks, and they're accountable to nobody. So they're just going to keep on going until they are stopped. Through violence, probably.
Well, it is Christmas. It's also the first night of Hanukkah, so let's wrap up the show with something positive. What exactly, I don't know, which is why I'm going to hand over to Jonathan for.
Christmas. People know that Ayn Rand was an atheist, staunch, but they might not know that she celebrated Christmas. I've been to the Ayn Rand archives and seen the actual Christmas cards that, she sent out and Christmas cards that she received. And, Dr. Peikoff has a wonderful essay that, he celebrates Christmas. Objectivists celebrate Christmas. And he actually wrote this wonderful essay about why Christmas should be more commercial, which when people hear that title, they're always shocked because, the sense is right. Oh, well, we really shouldn't have too much fun. It should be about sacrifice. And I don't know, baby Jesus or Mother Mary. I don't know. I mean, it's all a mystery to me. But I love what Dr. Peikoff identifies as Christmas is the commercial nature of it. Dr. Peikoff writes that Christmas in America is an exuberant display of human ingenuity. Let's see if I have it. Human ingenuity, capitalist productivity, and the enjoyment of life. Yet all of these are castigated as materialistic. The real meaning of the holiday, we are told, is assorted nativity tales and altruist injunctions, i.e., love my neighbor that no one takes seriously. So he has this wonderful whole essay about enjoying Christmas. And, Rand herself identified this, I guess now 40, almost 50 years ago, and talks about, and this is available online, and too, you should read it. And the charming aspect of Christmas, Rand wrote, is the fact that it expresses goodwill in a cheerful, happy, benevolent, non-sacrificial way. One says, Merry Christmas, not weep and repent, and the goodwill is expressed in a material, earthly form, giving presents to one's friends, sending them cards in token resemblance. So in that spirit, I say to Daniel, Razi, and Alex, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah as well. And Hanukkah, it's like 8 days of Christmas. And thank you to all of our subscribers, most of all, but our super chatters who have supported us over the last year. We sincerely couldn't do it without you, and we thank you quite a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I second that. Yeah, I know we do talk about things that are, not good that are going on in the world, and we talk about them daily, but we talk about them because we like all the good that there is in the world, and we like Western civilization, what it has given us, the life that it makes possible for people today, and we want it to continue, and we want it to expand to the places where it doesn't yet exist. So yeah, we absolutely should celebrate what we have. We should celebrate, especially on Christmas, which is a wonderful holiday and is super commercial. It should be more, but it is commercial, and that's what's one of the things that are beautiful about it. In England we have something that that you don't have in America, which is Boxing Day. But the part of it that you do have, which is the day after Christmas, the part of it that you do have, and I think we have everywhere in the West, is people going shopping because everything's on sale. So you shop before Christmas, you shop after Christmas, you eat a lot. It's all wonderful things that are only possible because of capitalism and are not possible in the places that have no elements of capitalism whatsoever.
Yeah, and certainly I'll say, in the States, Hanukkah has been wonderfully drummed up as this wonderful commercial alternative for kids who celebrate Hanukkah. So it's 8 nights of presents. And my parents had a present for me every night, and there's Christmas or Hanukkah cookies, and there's a Hanukkah party, and it really celebrates exactly, I think, what Rand talked about. It's ingenuity, it's fun, it's family, it's togetherness, and none of it is, as Rand wrote, it's not weep and repent. It's not draying on of so it's really a good time of year to celebrate and to thank our supporters and to identify the good in life, which Rand talked about and wrote about and we put forth.
Hanukkah cookies I have not yet encountered, so I might have to come to Chicago for next year's Hanukkah. I do know in Israel you eat donuts throughout Hanukkah,
Yeah.
which I
Sufganiyot, right?
Latkes.
Alex, any positive Hanukkah Christmas message?
I've had a lot of many years, and to really think very long and hard about the epistemological development, I would say, of Jewish philosophy. And I think this is my own opinion. I wonder, what is the thing that Jews fear the most, right? And why do we fear it the most? Why do I think that I do fear it in a sense because of the philosophy that has been kind of taught to me, by the people around me. And I think that that is actually the Jews fear dictatorship, I would say, and Jews fear imprisonment, right? And that is told again and again and again in all of the various stories. It's certainly the story of Hanukkah, right? When the Maccabees decided to revolt after the Greeks raised the taxes, and obviously there was obviously a very brutal dictatorship. There was a lot of humiliation going on, sacrificing of pigs in the temple, which is just around. But it was about humiliation, and so they fought a revolt, a bloody revolt, in order to not be under the dictatorship, in order to try and be free. And yes, of course, it was these were not exactly like it's a long time ago. These were not exactly laissez-faire capitalists who were atheists. Okay, so don't come at me and say that I support a horrible religious fanatics, right? But and then also the story of Passover, right? What is that story about? It's about being willing to literally die in the desert. Then that is preferable to being slaves, basically, right? So that is and really I think it would be interesting for for philosophers really to examine that and think about that. Why, what are the kind of the Jewish philosophy that's been prominent over the last, I would say, several hundred years. And I do think that it's the thing that Jews fear the most, I would say, is slavery. Yeah, being slaves, basically.
Yeah, last time Hanukkah came up, people were coming at you. I think I was
Yeah.
one of them, although I said I'm not sure that the Jews were the good guys, but I do need to brush up on my history. So I love the fact that you brought up the Greeks raised taxes part, which
Well, I mean, it was literally just here. I mean, they actually found the Acker from the battle, from the Maccabee battle, down the road in the Givati parking lot in Jerusalem. Okay, might go and
uh,
see it on my way home.
And yeah, Passover is very much an anti-slavery holiday. Although I really disliked Passover because back when I
Mhm.
was in Israel, because you can't eat bread. You
Well,
have to eat those horrible things that injure
yeah.
the inside of your mouth. So anyway,
Okay, but also, hang on a minute. I do want to defend this for a second, okay? Right. If you want to be able, right, what do you want to do when you have your children? You want to be able you want to be able to tell them in ways that they will understand certain things that are important to you. So if there was a certain event like Hanukkah, right, like the Battle of the like the Maccabean revolt, and you wanted to explain that to other people, right, who maybe were living in different centuries, right, really far out, you would explain it in these types of ways, and you would have these types of maybe symbols, right, to commemorate things, and I think that freedom really is an important message. And I do very much like getting together with my family twice a year, Hanukkah and Passover, right? I see them more than that. And celebrating freedom. I love it. I absolutely love it. For me, I I'm very happy for my freedom.
me too, Daniel. I don't know how they celebrate Christmas exactly in Slovakia, how it's different. But yeah, maybe you can enlighten us.
Well, first of all, Alex reminded me we need to make Battle of Thermopylae an actual holiday so we can have a bit more secular celebration of sort of fighting against the big bad. But yeah, when it comes to, I definitely think Christmas in Slovakia should be more commercial because we have about 50 state holidays when everything has to be closed down. And Christmas Eve, first day of Christmas and second day of Christmas are all state holidays. So for like 3 days, everything is closed and it's really annoying. And I want to go out, I want to celebrate. And I really, don't just want to be stuck at home, especially at the really like Festivus sort of like festival day of the year. But I love everything about Christmas, Santa, baby Jesus, the holiday armadillo, all of them love it. It's all great stuff.
Dude, you got to ruin it with a Friends reference? Come on.
I don't
Anyway,
understand. So who had the baby? Was it Santa or I don't, who,
we
what was
had,
Mr.
by
that?
the way, in one of our in-person events recently, we had a whole debate about whether you should teach children about Santa. Jonathan, you posted something on Facebook from Dr. Peikoff about it, but we are out of time, so we're not going to talk about it here. Uh, uh, Parting thoughts. Where can people find you, or anything you want to promote, Alex?
Yeah, so I just want to say last night we was Christmas Eve, which is called Nacht, and that is a kind of a tradition that really comes from Jews who come from kind of more European descent, whereby they weren't allowed to go outside on Christmas. They, people, ancestors of my family would sit in the house with the lights off, right, trying to hide from a pogrom. So you have that memory last night, and then today lighting Hanukkah candles. I felt very, very free, very celebratory, and I really hope everybody else shares that kind of sentiment.
Jonathan, parting thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to all. Thank you to all for your support. A great book to pick up for a gift for a pet lover in your life is Dr. Peikoff's Can You Really Love a Dog? It's available at Amazon. It's Miss Rand and Dr. Peikoff's, if you will, perspective on pet ownership. So it's a great gift. Has some unique objectivist perspectives in it. And thanks again for your support here at ARC UK.
I have to read this comment from Vered in the chat. Vered says, if you lie to children about Santa, they will never trust you again, in my experience, LOL. That is a bit harsh, but I'm also very much against telling people that Santa is real, telling kids that Santa is real. Yeah, kids, as a grown up, if somebody tells you this, you will hopefully know to dismiss it immediately. As a kid, you don't know things about the world, and you're more susceptible to that. And yeah, so please don't bullshit your kids, people. Daniel.
Well, for me, it was always baby Jesus who brought the presents, and I actually never believed in it anyway. I just assumed that my parents also know we're just talking about stories. So, but I also wouldn't recommend lying to your children. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Damned Dan.
I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy Hanukkah. We'll see you tomorrow.